Is Reserve the best map to scav on? Why Reserve and not any of the other popular scav choices, like Streets, Lighthouse, or Interchange? So, in my last video, I timed how long it took me to make 20 million rubles on every map as a scav, and Reserve took the #1 spot at 5 hours and 58 minutes to make 20 million, averaging 3.35 mil per hour, followed by Interchange at 7 hours and 17 minutes, averaging 2.74 mil per hour. But I wanted to see how well both of those performed over a much longer experiment. So I decided to retest Reserve and Interchange, and I asked you guys to pick out a third map in this poll here, which Streets won easily. So I made another 50 million as a scav on Streets, Interchange, and Reserve, for a total of 150 million rubles made for this retest. The variables I controlled for this test are the server. I played every test on the Australian server. The time of day, I started every test at 7:30 AM WAST, which is DMT +8. The type of day, I did every test on weekdays, and my intel level was 3, and my fence rep was over 6, and I had no income external from the scav runs, like no insurance and no hideout. I also kept my general strategy the same, aiming for fast raids, where I'd play riskier if I had bad gear or safer if I had good gear. And there were no active events in the game. Due to how large the ruble goal of 50 mil was, I ran each test over 2 days. Both days I started at 7:30 AM GMT +8, but on the first day I played for 12 hours and then finished off the remaining amount on the second day. As for variables I didn't control, there are many which just can't be controlled. However, there are 2 variables that aren't so obvious and likely had a large impact on the results. And that is my knowledge of each map. I know some maps far better than other maps, so I'd expect the results to be skewed slightly in favor of those maps. And of these 3 maps, I know Streets the best, followed by Interchange and then Reserve. Also, after I'd already completed the tests, Streets loot distribution was changed. BSG stated that they adjusted the loot spawns on Streets of Tarkov, increased the chance of rare loot spawning in locked rooms, and decreased it in other areas. This change is a direct nerf to scav running, as they generally cannot access locked rooms. However, unfortunately, running a fair retest right now is almost impossible as we move into late wipe events and economy. So take the results with a grain of salt, and I'll be retesting every map again next wipe. My strategy on Streets of Tarkov was to focus on looting Golden World, Museum, BSG HQ, If I got the relaxation key from the BSG HQ, then sometimes I'd run across the map and loot the hive. And I'd also focus on Chikanya, and finally Lexus, especially if I needed to find a bigger bag. The run actually went amazing, far better than the last Streets run. Notably, I found 3 Bitcoins and looted the Hive 3 times. I only died to PMCs twice, but I got team killed by player scavs 5 times. On Interchange, I focused on the tech stores, that is Idea Office, TTS, German, Rasmussen, Texo, and Techlight. I also hit PC blocks along the way, such as in the previously mentioned Idea Office, Goshen Office, and multiple places around Ollie. Finally, I'd occasionally check the Goshen lockers and food. This run was absolutely awful. Even though I made it out with 10 GPUs, 14 Tetrises, and a bunch of other loot, I died 15 times. The worst death was to an extract camping player scav when I had over 1.5 million loot. For reserve, if I spawned east side, I'd loot school and get out hole in the wall extract. If I spawn on the west side, I'd loot White Knight and extract Depot Hermetic Door. And on the rare occasion that I'd spawn northwest, if I also had a small bag and rig, Then I just take this route to Heating Pipe and loot a few crates along the way. Before this test, I experimented a lot with pushing further in the raid and looting other places, especially King and D2, but almost every time I risked a longer raid, I died to some PMC hiding in a corner. So that's why I stuck to the strategy used in my previous 20 million ruble test. The run was very relaxed, I only died 3 times, but I didn't get as many valuables as I was expecting. The complete VODs of each run will be linked in the description below. In first position was Streets at 13 hours, 53 minutes and 51 seconds, averaging 3.6 mil per hour. Then Reserve in second at 14 hours, 26 minutes and 16 seconds, averaging 3.47 mil per hour. Then third Interchange at 15 hours, 39 minutes and 13 seconds, averaging 3.19 mil per hour. Now, if we combine the results from the previous test to get our average rubles per hour over 70 million, we get Reserve in first at 20 hours, 22 minutes and 29 seconds, averaging 3.44 mil per hour. Second is Streets at 22 hours, 25 minutes and 12 seconds, averaging 3.12 mil per hour. And then third is Interchange at 22 hours, 57 minutes and 4 seconds, averaging 3.05 mil per hour. For the full stats, check out this spreadsheet, which I'll link in the description below. The results are not so clear-cut as it may seem though. There are other factors than just the rubles per hour that should affect your decision on which map you should scav. The first and probably most important factor is the difference in performance between the maps. If you don't have a decent computer, then Streets isn't even an option, as even with my 5800X 3D and 3070 GPU, I'm only getting around 70 to 80 FPS, which sometimes drops to 40. Secondly, there is a massive difference between the maps in how much you need to learn in order to copy my strategies. For Reserve, I'm basically looting a tiny section of the map over and over, and only taking 3 extracts. Whereas for Streets and Interchange, you need to learn almost the entire map. Lastly, even though Interchange wasn't that much worse than Streets and Reserve, it was by far the most stressful of the 3 maps. I ran into far more PMCs camping random corners in the shadows, and I had to make a lot of strategical decisions each raid depending on what I was hearing and seeing. Compared to Reserve, where I could just slap on an anime on another monitor and zone out. Next wipe, I'll retest every map so that we can always have recent data for the current wipe.